The Debt Collector. The sun dipped low over the rolling hills of Redwater County, painting the land in gold and crimson. Dust trailed behind a tall man riding a chestnut stallion, his hat tilted low, his coat trimmed with the fine leather only the wealthy could afford. They called him Cole Maddox, the richest rancher in 3 counties. A man who didn't smile often, didn't waste words, and didn't forgive debts. Today, he wasn't riding to strike a deal. He was riding to collect. Cole's boots hit the dirt as he dismounted in front of the run-down Miller farmhouse. The boards were gray with age, the porch sagged, and the air smelled faintly of rain and desperation. He tied his horse, adjusted his hat, and knocked once. A frail voice answered from inside. "See, come in." When Cole stepped through the door, the scent of sickness met him. Samuel Miller, the farmer who owed him more than he'd ever be able to repay, lay weak in bed. His face was pale, his chest heaving with each breath. And beside him stood a young woman, slender, with hands red from work, a loose braid falling over her shoulder. Her dress was worn but clean, her eyes the color of the sky before a storm. "Mr. Maddox," she said quietly, clutching the edge of a chair. "You came for my father's debt." Cole nodded. "It's been over a year, Miss Miller." She swallowed. "We tried, but the harvest failed again. We don't have the money." He looked around the small room. No furniture worth selling, no cattle outside, not even a wagon in working order. He'd known it before he came. Samuel Miller had nothing left. But Cole hadn't expected her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clara," she said, meeting his eyes even though her hands trembled. Something about her steadiness struck him. There was no begging, no lies, just quiet honesty. Cole turned to the old man. "You owe me $600, Mr. Miller. If you can't pay, I'll have to claim your land." The man coughed, eyes wet. "It's not worth that much anymore. But please, don't take her." Cole frowned. "Her?" Clara quickly turned away, her shoulders stiffening. "He means the house. He doesn't want us turned out." But the look in Samuel Miller's eyes said otherwise, a look of helplessness, of knowing he couldn't protect his daughter. Cole stood silent for a long time. Then he said, "I didn't come here to throw anyone out. I came to settle the debt. There's another way." Clara looked up. "Another way?" He nodded once. "Come work for me. At the Maddox Ranch. You'll cook, clean, help with the house. I'll consider your father's debt paid." She blinked, stunned. "You'd let us keep our home?" "Yes." Her lips parted, disbelief written on her face. "Why would you do that?" Cole's gaze softened, though he tried to hide it under his usual sternness. "Because a man should sleep under his own roof. And because you seem like the kind of woman who keeps things together, even when everything falls apart." Clara's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not with respect. Not with warmth. She turned to her father, who took her hand weakly. "Go," he whispered. "It's the only way, my girl. Go and live." Clara looked back at Cole, the rich cowboy standing in her doorway, dust and sunset behind him like something out of a dream she didn't dare have. He extended his hand. "Come with me." She hesitated, then placed her small hand in his. His touch was warm, rough from years of ranch work, yet strangely gentle. And just like that, her life changed. The ride to the Maddox Ranch was long and silent. The evening wind tangled her hair, and she kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, afraid to look back. When they arrived, she saw fields stretching far and wide, horses galloping free, and a large stone house glowing in lamplight. It was beautiful, too beautiful for someone like her. Cole helped her down from the horse, careful not to startle her. "You'll have your own room. My housekeeper will show you around in the morning. For now you need rest." "Thank you," she whispered, unsure what else to say. Cole nodded and walked toward the stable, the quiet crunch of his boots fading into the night. From her window later, Clara watched him working by lantern light, brushing down his horse, his broad shoulders outlined against the glow. There was something lonely about him, something that drew her heart before she could stop it. She lay awake for a long time, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the wind, the horses, the heartbeat of a life she never expected to live. And as sleep finally claimed her, the words he'd spoken echoed softly in her mind. "Come with me." The hand he took. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains, gilding the wood-paneled walls of the Maddox ranch house. Clara woke to the distant sound of hooves and men calling to one another out in the fields. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then the smell of coffee and warm biscuits reached her, and she remembered. The rich cowboy had brought her here, and he hadn't taken anything from her except her fear. She rose quietly, washed her face, and stepped out into the hall. The place was larger than she'd imagined. High ceilings, wide rooms, the faint scent of cedar and horses. She found the kitchen bustling with movement. An older woman, Mrs. Turner, the housekeeper, turned with a smile. "You must be the new girl," she said kindly. "Mr. Maddox told me you'd start today. Breakfast first." Clara nodded shyly. "Yes, ma'am." They ate together, and Mrs. Turner told her stories about the ranch, about how Cole Maddox built it from nothing, about how he'd lost his family young but worked until he owned half the valley. Clara listened, quiet and curious. "He's a good man," the housekeeper said softly, "just doesn't know how to show it sometimes." When Clara stepped outside later, the air was crisp and full of promise. Ranch hands moved about, horses snorted, and the sun rose over the open land. Then she saw him, Cole, tall and commanding, tightening a saddle strap with practiced strength. He glanced up, saw her, and gave a faint nod. "Morning." "Morning," she replied, folding her hands. "What would you like me to do?" He smiled a little, that rare curve of his mouth that made her heart skip. "You don't take long to ask, do you?" "I came to work, Mr. Maddox." "Cole," he corrected. "Just Cole." The sound of his name on her lips felt strange at first, but somehow right. He showed her how to feed the chickens, how to prepare lunch for the hands, and how to patch up torn fabric. By midday, her dress was dusted with flour, her cheeks pink from the sun, and he found himself watching her more than he should. Days turned into weeks. Clara brought warmth into every corner of that big house. She sang softly while sweeping, baked bread that filled the halls with sweetness, and laughed with Mrs. Turner until even Cole found himself smiling at the sound. But what surprised him most was how she treated him, not like a man of wealth, not like the man she owed, but like someone human. One evening, after the day's work was done, Clara carried a tray out to the porch where Cole sat watching the sunset. "Thought you might want some supper," she said. He looked up, his hat resting on his knee. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." She set the tray down, stew, bread, and coffee, and lingered beside him. The sky burned orange and violet. Cole gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Sit." For a long time, they sat in comfortable silence. Finally, he said, "You're not afraid of me any more." "I never was," she answered softly. "I was afraid of what would happen to my father." "Not of you." He nodded slowly, eyes on the horizon. "He's doing better." "Yes. The doctor says he'll recover. He misses me, but he told me to stay. Said I'd find something good here." Cole turned to her. "Do you think he was right?" Clara hesitated, meeting his eyes. "I don't know yet." Something in that answer made him smile. "Fair enough." That night, after she'd gone to her room, Cole couldn't sleep. He found himself standing by the window, looking out over the fields, remembering the girl's father, the desperation in his voice when he'd said don't take her. Cole hadn't meant to. He only wanted to help. But now, It was her voice that steadied him, her laughter that made the empty halls feel like home again, and that frightened him more than any debt ever could. A week later, a letter arrived. It was from Clara's father, weak handwriting but full of gratitude. He thanked Cole for his kindness, but at the bottom of the letter was a single line that made Cole's chest tighten. "If you ever come to love her, son, don't let pride stop you from saying so." That evening, Cole rode into town and returned with a small bundle, a blue ribbon and a simple silver locket. When he walked into the kitchen, Clara was kneading dough, her hands covered in flour. She looked up, startled. "You're back early." He set the parcel on the table. "For you." She blinked. "For me? Why?" "Because every woman deserves something that's hers." She opened it carefully, eyes widening at the locket. "It's beautiful." "I can't accept." "Clara." His voice was firm but gentle. "You already have." Her lips trembled. "You've done too much for me already. You saved our home, you gave me work. And you gave me something back," he said quietly. "You gave me peace." Their eyes met, and neither looked away. Outside, the wind sighed through the pines. Inside, the silence between them grew heavy, charged with something neither dared name. Finally, he stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the warmth of him. "I came to collect a debt," Cole murmured, his voice low. "But you were never part of it. You were the part one couldn't leave behind." Her breath caught. "Cole." He took her hand, the same way he had that first night, but this time there was no business between them. Only heart. "Come with me," he whispered again. And she did. He led her outside beneath the wide Texas sky, where the stars burned bright as lanterns. He slipped the ribbon through her hair and fastened the locket around her neck. "When I first saw you," he said softly, "I thought I was collecting what I was owed. Turns out I was finding what I'd lost." She smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. "And what was that?" "Home," he said simply. Then he kissed her, slow, tender, full of all the words neither of them had dared speak. The ranch wind carried the scent of hay and evening rain, the horses stirred in the distance, and two lonely hearts finally stopped wandering. Epilogue. Months later, the Maddox ranch no longer felt like just his. Clara's laughter filled the mornings. Her hands worked beside his, not in debt, but in love. Her father, now strong again, visited often, always smiling when he saw them together. Cole still kept that old ledger in his office, the one filled with names and debts and numbers. But next to Samuel Miller's name, he'd written two words in his neat, bold handwriting. "Paid in full." And under it, a third, added later, in his wife's gentle hand. "With love."